Hello, I am Dan Stapleton, and this is the IGN review discussion for Bloodborne. With me here is Chloe Rad,
Hey guys.
Marty Sleva,
Hey!
and our reviewer, Brandin Terrell.
Hello.
Brandin, you gave this game a 9.1 for amazing,
I sure did.
and here is what you said.
Bloodborne is an amazing, exacting, and exhausting pilgrimage through a gorgeous land that imposes the feeling of approaching the bottom of a descent into madness. Though extended load times and minor frame rate hitches have an effect on the pacing, it's otherwise an intensely challenging and rewarding game. There's an incredible power to unlocking its mysteries and in succeeding, despite its demand for a pound of your flesh. For more on Bloodborne, stick with IGN.
All right, everybody, you know what Brandin thinks. What do you think? Do you agree or disagree with his review, Chloe?
I completely agree. I actually probably would have scored it higher. I really love this game. It was really great. Yeah.
Just calling you out.
Wow,
I know,
she's super
you think
calling.
you're better than me?
What? No.
What do you think the performance issues were not as big of an issue as Brandin had, or what's the difference of opinion here?
No, the loading screens were definitely really bad, and I think did you also have a problem with the
frame rate?
Was it the frame rate? So I don't really mind the frame rate too much. Like it's 30 FPS.
Yeah.
I believe, yeah.
Locked.
I feel like it gives it kind of a more cinematic experience. I think Dark Souls 2 had 60 frames per second, and that kind of threw me off. Everything felt really like light and kind of
Like gamier, kind of?
yeah. Like I like that Bloodborne and Dark Souls feel heavier.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you agree?
Yeah, like Dark Souls 2, when it was running at 60 on PC, it almost felt like when you go into a Best Buy and like watch a movie being displayed on like a display TV.
Smooth motion. is
Yeah,
on,
where you're
and-
like, well, this looks weird. I don't know if this looks good or bad, but it just looks different than everything else.
I think a bunch of heads just exploded when you suggested 30 frames is better than 60.
I know.
But okay.
I know it's a really big debate. Like I'm a PC gamer, and I'm saying that. So
Yeah.
like but no, I think it works fine. But the loading screens killed me.
Yeah.
Those, especially because you have to keep going back to the hub world if you want to like reload all your items.
Right, so that was the other part that got me too, is that there's so much loading in the game, especially because you have to go back to the hub world rather than being able to teleport between lamps. So
Yeah.
I'm curious, was that as big of a deal for you as it was for me?
Yeah, that I didn't like how you couldn't rest at lamps. That would have been a lot. It would have really streamlined the process of like grinding, especially, like being able to respawn everything just by going back to the lamp instead of 40-second loading to the hub world, 40-second loading back to where you want to go. Like,
Sure.
it didn't feel very efficient.
It's a little quicker than 40 seconds going back to the hub, but coming back is still 40 seconds, which is it's like a full minute of loading at that point.
Yeah, I mean, bottom line, there's a lot of load screens in Bloodborne.
Brandon really liked the Chalice dungeons, which are sort of the procedurally generated things that you can share with your friends online. I'm not crazy about them, if only because I think the procedurally generated nature of them go against what makes the Souls series world and levels so amazing, is that there are these sort of very like curated, bespoke things with very distinct enemy placement and very distinct trap placement and level design, and to procedurally generate that sort of takes the magic out of it a little bit. Like I appreciate the fact that it's giving you something new every time and unexpected, but I don't think like those, to me, the Chalice dungeons as a whole feel B tier to the levels in the actual like main campaign.
No, I think that's fair, and I would agree with that. The only counterpoint I would say to it is that I totally agree with you that I love Dark Souls 2, Bloodborne, sort of really, like you said, curated, very deliberate, meticulous design, meticulous placement. But once you're through that, like that's it. Like you have PvP, you've got cooperative stuff.
Yeah.
There's really not much more to it. So what I do like about the Chalice dungeons is it gives you an opportunity to be surprised again for the first time in this world, and this world can be super surprising.
So Brandin, you appreciate the variety from randomization, even though it goes against the core design of Bloodborne.
I mean, I don't know that I agree it goes against the core design. I think it's supplementary to the core design.
Yeah, it's like a side thing.
Yeah, I don't think that this is really the marquee feature. Nobody goes to the show to see a secondary, the second stage or whatever. But I think it's something that helps. It helps after you've gotten that big marquee feature out of the way. After you've seen all there is to see, the Chalice dungeons add a little something extra if you want to spend more time in that world.
Let's move on then to the next question, which is, and we'll start with you, Brandin. What is your favorite thing about Bloodborne, and what is your least favorite thing about Bloodborne?
Probably the load times, but it all kind of is wrapped up together in this big ball of snakes. It's
a ball of snakes.
Yeah, which
Why is it always snakes?
It's always snakes. It's the load times, but it's also how the game design, and it's not really fair to say because being able to warp between bonfires and Dark Souls is a very Dark Souls thing. So coming into Bloodborne, because the games are so closely tied together, we might think that like we're owed that, right? Like that is something that we should that's something that should be in the game, but it's a different game, right? And there might be reasons for taking it out, but coming from Dark Souls into Bloodborne and losing that functionality, like it stings, And then you add on top of that the 40-second load times for a death, 40-second load times for warping into an area, 15 to 20-second load times for going back to the Hunter's World, and then having to go back to the Hunter's World and then back to your area.
A little bit of a drag.
Yeah,
but very quickly, what's your first? What's your best thing about?
Oh, the world, absolutely the world. Combat's great. I love the faster nature of it, but the world is every time I step into a From Software game. And I step into a new area for the first time, it's the most important moment of my life. It's like it is this awe-inspiring thing to step into the woods and wonder I'm going to die in every corner of this place, and I know it, and that's a really powerful experience.
Marty, best thing, worst thing?
Yeah, mine sort of echo that. The world design's incredible. I really like, in particular, just the atmosphere is great, the environment's great, but the level design is really smart in the way that the bonfire lanterns are spaced out really far apart, but there's so many sort of shortcuts you open up as you're exploring the world where as soon as you venture out and are like, man, I'm way too far from home, I am super worried that I'm gonna die, lose all my progress, all of a sudden you stumble upon a switch and you're like, well, what does this do? You pull it, you enter an elevator, and bam, you're back at the central area. You're like, all right, well, I just opened up a shortcut that is gonna save me 45 minutes going forward. And I love that sort of, it's like that sensation I felt in Dark Souls 1 when I got to the church and then I went down the elevator and got back to the Firelink Shrine. And I'm like, oh man, like this is the kind of game this is. That's my favorite thing. Worst thing, load times and it feels anti-player to have to go back to the Hunter's Dream every time I want to level up or buy something or travel elsewhere in the world. I don't think it adds anything to the game. Not being able to do that from specific lanterns, to me, is just time-consuming, and it's not a smart design decision, in my opinion.
Chloe, best thing, worst thing?
So mine are kind of actually very similar to yours, Marty, but I will build on so the level design always is one of my favorite things about Souls games, but I think with Bloodborne in particular, I beat the game last night. So I got close to beating the game the other night. I knew that I was at the end, but I also knew that I had these optional bosses that I had to go through, right? I thought it was just going to be run through these kind of side areas, but it turned out to be 10 extra hours of things to do.
Yeah.
And I could have completely beat the game without ever seeing any of that, until New Game Plus, So just the fact that there are all these optional areas, but they're so fleshed out and developed. The amount of detail in this game is just incredible.
Totally.
Well, that's our highs and lows of Bloodborne. For more on Bloodborne, be sure to stay on IGN.